If you find yourself getting stuck painting portraits, this video is for you.
This is all the stuff that I wish I knew when I first started painting portraits, and I'm sharing everything I know with you. I'm going to be using these brushes, which are mostly rounds and flats. Palette consists of titanium white, yellow ochre, cadmium red, and ivory black. I think the first thing that everyone needs to think about when they're drawing the head is that essentially what you're putting down are large masses of form. We tend to look at the head as this highly detailed object with very, very, very precise lines. And you actually want to start loose in the beginning. If you start too tightly, you're going to get in trouble. So as you can see, I'm just kind of marking off where things are, and I'm putting stuff down in a very blocky and simple fashion. I'm not looking to get these curves right. I just want to get the overall form of the head down and really just get a clear understanding of where there's light and where there's shadow. My experience tells me that even though I'm drawing loosely, I still want accuracy. So you want to go slow. What you're seeing here in this video, which probably is about 3 minutes of drawing, if that, might even be less. What you want to do is spend a good 20, maybe even 30 minutes focusing on these big, huge, blocky shapes. So you really don't want to start laying down paint until 30 minutes into it. And the reason is because almost always the mistakes that we find once we block in the color is a drawing mistake. So get the drawing right. Take your time. You still want to keep it loose so that things are malleable and you can move them around. But you don't want to rush through it. That's a big mistake. Just because you're drawing loose doesn't mean you're not drawing accurately. You'll notice that my initial efforts are about drawing the form of the head before I actually get into the features. So I'm not going to get too deep into features early on. I'm really just trying to focus on, well, what's the overall head look like? So a good rule of thumb for you guys is forms first, features second. And notice as I draw, I'm separating everything into two categories, light and dark. What's light stays the color of the current canvas, and what's dark is going to be shaded in a very rough, rugged fashion. I recommend both painting and drawing like this because the old adage is true, shadows render form. So having drawn for about 20 minutes, I'm now laying in color. And I have no interest whatsoever in terms of getting these smooth, clean transitions and so on and so forth. My only objective right now is to block out where there is light and where there's dark. The only difference is instead of using lines, I'm now using blocks of paint. And almost the entire time I'm painting, I'm squinting. And the reason is because unless I squint, I'm just not going to read the value right. So that's yet another thing to keep in mind when you're painting faces is to stay away from details and get those early blocks in, because those are actually what are going to make your painting look right. It's not about putting in the details up front. That's actually the last thing you need to worry about. Now, the mixture that I'm using is actually all four of those colors. I'm using some red, some white, a tiny bit of black to cool it down, and obviously some yellow ochre in there because of the yellow in the skin. But I'm not too worried about getting an exact match. Right now, I'm just trying to kind of feel it out. One thing I'll tell you is that the color that you're mixing on your palette is not going to look the same as when you put it down on your canvas. And the reason is because the canvas has other colors and we read colors in context. So you're mixing these piles independently, but once you stick them onto your painting, it's going to look totally different. That's where you judge your colors, on the canvas, not on the palette. Now, I'm rushing over towards getting the background in before I ever even get the rest of it painted in. Now, why would I do that? There's a very specific reason. Because of what I just talked about, I need context. You can't judge anything without context. Context is what gives you an understanding of what it looks like when it's closer to being finished. And the other reason for working the background is that you can use it to refine the drawing. So I'm reshaping the head and the hair by adding in the background. So I'm slowly shifting from working in these large macro planes into these medium planes, slightly smaller facets of the face. And that's where I'm starting to really consider what features actually look like on this particular face. You'll also notice that I'm avoiding curves. And the reason is because initially what I want is to really lay in blocks of paint that give me a clear sense of a geometric shape, geometric form that I can later start to smooth out. If I do my smoothing out too early and my lines are curvy, the face tends to look like it's melting, and I get really frustrated there. Now, once I have most of my information down, I can start to step back and really see a face emerge. And this is where I start to really consider, okay, can I start to really put in more finer details? And it's been helpful for me to somewhat over exaggerate the eyes or the nose or even the features of the mouth, because it helps me get a little bit more accuracy. And so as I put in information like this, I'm going to have somewhat exaggerated form, but I kind of scale it back as I add more and more paint to the surface. So let's now talk about the messy middle. Having taught people how to draw and paint for the last 25 years, everybody, and I mean myself included, wants to throw it away right when we get at this stage. It looks unfinished. There's a whole bunch of problems that have emerged. It gets frustrating, and it's exactly where everyone wants to chuck the painting and start again. And that's a mistake. The idea here is to build a skill set in which you're able to resolve the problems. And the best way to do that is within context of other artists. Just like any other skill, we need one-on-one coaching, and it's very important that we join a community like an art class or a mentor and have them give continual feedback as we move through a piece like this. I watched an artist that I really admired do a portrait study, and during his time on camera, he mentioned several times how much he admired his teacher for constantly stepping in and consulting with him and slowing him down, which I think is exactly what all of us need. The tendency is to start speeding things up and moving faster and faster towards the goal. And that is one of the major mistakes that people make right at this phase. Slow down. So I finally have a tiny brush in my hand, and this is where I'm really digging into details. It's not until about 60, maybe 70% of the way through on this painting, I'm finally thinking about what are these subtle adjustments that I can make using a small brush to really bring this piece to life. As I drop down into the neck, one of the things that I want you guys to think about is how simply I'm blocking in color. I'm really just avoiding detail, because the more detail I bring down towards that area, the more your eye is going to float away from the main subject. One key thing that I want you guys to think about is the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. That means that just like John Singer Sargent, I want to make sure that everything that surrounds the head is painted with less resolve. It's painted with a lot less attention and detail, so that your eyes sit comfortably on the head and on the portrait. So while it's important to have context, you really want to make sure that all your detail and all your focus goes right back into the face. So what's happening now? Well, I'm trying to get a good read of values. My eyes are constantly squinting at both the subject and the painting. I'm trying to get a nice clean read and balance between the lights and darks. And with faces, that can be extremely challenging. And what almost no one ever discusses is that there's two ways in which shadows play out, especially on a head. The first way is that there's this clean cast shadow, and the other is the subtle rounding of the form. And the subtle rounding of the form usually works out best by glazing, which is what I do towards the end. But it takes a minute to really get used to reading each of these two system of values that I wish somebody had told me about when I first started painting and drawing faces. And while we're on that topic, the other thing that I wish somebody had told me is that faces require multiple layers. It's not going to happen in draft 1, draft 2, draft 3, or even draft 4. I heard that John Singer Sargent once painted a face 16 times until he was truly satisfied, which is crazy to me. But he did that. And apparently the painting was 6 months overdue, and he refused to let it go until it was just right. Portrait artists are extremely patient people. They need to take the time to get it just right and just the way they want it to read. Now, in this particular case, I'm doing this as a sketch, so I'm unconcerned with a clean, polished look at the end. All I want is to get a likeness. And I believe I get it towards the end. But it took me several drafts until I finally got to where I wanted it to be. So you guys are watching a video that condenses all of this, but I had to step back from the painting on several occasions, let it dry, and for me to really think about, well, are those shapes right? Do I need to adjust some of these values? what part of this painting is working for me and what part isn't. And I kept going and going and going until I finally got a likeness. And that's exactly how I approach faces here at the art studio. Now, a few of my students actually saw that I had shelved the project and they asked, did you give up on this painting? And I said, no, I'm letting it dry and then I'm going to oil it down and rework it. And that's one of the key aspects to becoming good at portraiture, is a willingness to rework. Even if you spent hours on it, rework it. Never leave a part of your painting unfinished or uncorrected if you know that there's something wrong with it. This applies to drawing as well. It's not something that you want to just sit down and rush right through. In most cases, these beautiful drawings that you see by many artists around the world take somewhere between 3.5 to 5 hours to complete. And that's just a drawing. So if somebody said to me, what's the secret to making a painting look right, especially in portraiture? My answer would be one simple word: patience. And of course, both practice and knowledge is really important, but a willingness to come back to it, even when you're frustrated, and rework parts of it that just don't seem right, will teach you so much. Funny enough, having done this one demonstration, I decided I'm going to do 5 more of them for the channel. And I'm actually really excited because yes, I do need to spend time, slow down, and follow my own advice, but it's worth it to me because it just makes me that much better of an artist. So to summarize, before we finish up this painting, I'm going to give you 12 key ideas to really help you master portraiture. 1. Start loose but accurate. Get the big shapes in the right place softly. 2. Slow down. The first 30 minutes decides the next 3 hours. 3. Build the underlying form first. Features sit on the head. They don't create it. 4. Separate your lights from your darks before you touch any midtones. 2 values is all you need in the beginning. 5. Blocking your colors with big brush strokes. If you're using a small brush in the first hour, you're already lost. 6. Save the details for the very end, and then use only half the details you think you need. 7. Your colors will look different on the palette than it does on the canvas. Always trust what's on the canvas every time. 8. Work large to medium to small, in that order. 9. Keep everything simple and geometric until you're halfway through. Always think planes before curves. 10. Never quit in the messy middle. Every painting gets ugly around 50 to 60% of the way through. That's not failure. It's an inevitable process. 11. Push through problems instead of starting over. It's almost always faster to fix what you have than to begin again. And 12, consult with other artists as you work. They will pick up on things that you may not. And in case I didn't address it before, the reason why I use the Zorn palette is because it's, in my opinion, the best palette to paint a face in.
Well, we hope you guys liked this video. If you want to see more, check out our channel for more drawing and painting tips.
And I'm excited to share with you guys that I'm currently working on a number of new heads where I'm both drawing and painting them, and sharing everything that I know with you guys.
Yeah, so stay tuned and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye, guys. Paint portrait. Oh.
Yes.
Yes. Too many words.
Yes.
Way too many words. I have a heart of stone.